Joining us now for another segment of In the Legal Know is Vincent J. Russo, and today we are talking about healthcare directives and who has the right to make healthcare decisions for you. And let's start right off with that. Vincent, first of all, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
my
for being
pleasure.
here.
Great to be here. Yeah.
Who has the decision to make we'll do everything in terms of me. Who has the decision to make, healthcare decisions for me?
Okay, so let's start with you.
Yes.
You make your own decisions.
Okay.
No one has the right to step in and make decisions for you as a matter of law up front, unless you're under age 18. Okay. Then the parents can make the decision for a minor in New York. So depending on what state you live in, we have different laws affecting healthcare decision making and who can make those decisions. So we start with you have capacity. You make your own healthcare decisions.
Capacity means I can make my own decisions.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's the starting point.
Okay. So something happens. I lose that capacity to make those decisions. Then what happens?
Okay. So now we have to understand what laws apply and where we live. So we're going to talk from a New York perspective this morning. Okay. So in New York, you have the ability to sign a healthcare proxy, which authorizes an agent to be able to make healthcare decisions for you if you're not able to. And you can name in New York only one agent at a time.
Oh, okay.
All right, so that avoids conflicts, because if you named more than one and they disagree with what decisions should be made in the hospital, what would the doctor or the hospital do? So it's only one agent at a time. You can have a backup agent, just like the power of attorney.
Okay.
You can name backups. Now, the question then becomes, what decisions can they make? And that goes to communication. You, the principal, have to communicate what you want or do not want in terms of healthcare decisions. So the agent has to make those decisions as if you were making them. All right, so
as you're saying, it's got to be communications. Let's say I choose my husband to be my agent.
Okay.
That is he has my healthcare proxy. He is my healthcare proxy.
Yeah.
What is the term?
Well, he's your agent under your healthcare proxy.
He is my agent. Okay. Because I never heard the term agent before.
Okay.
So now we know that's the legal term. The person who you determined to have your healthcare proxy is your agent. Okay. So is it just verbal communication, or you write this down on what I want that person to decide for me?
Okay. Good question. It's generally verbal communication, that your spouse, in your example, would understand what you would or would not want in a particular situation. So that's our starting point. The agent in New York does not have the authority to use substituted judgment or a best interest standard. They're to make decisions based on what they believe you would want to have happen in a particular situation. So that's our starting point. It gets much more complicated, because once we get to life-sustaining treatment, end-of-life decisions, then there's a whole nother standard and requirement that comes into play.
Okay, those are end-of-life decisions.
Right.
If I don't have the capacity right now to make my decisions, the agent is making what kind of decisions for me?
Well, let's say you're in a hospital in an emergency setting, and there's a decision as to what procedure should be done. Do we do surgery A or surgery B? That would be a healthcare decision that needs to be made.
Okay. So, end of life decisions.
Right.
We're talking what? Feeding tubes? Like, what kind of decisions there?
Right. So the typical definition of that situation would be that the person is terminally ill or in a persistent vegetative state with no likelihood of recovery, or has an incurable condition that's advancing and has a dramatic impact on their quality of life. So in those situations, those triggers, then the question becomes respirators, ventilators, feeding tubes. In New York, we have a law that says that the agent in your healthcare proxy has to have clear and convincing evidence of what you would want or not want. in particular, artificial nutrition and hydration. So you can sign a healthcare proxy and put language in the proxy that expresses what you would or would not want. Or the preferential way would be to sign a second document called a living will.
Okay.
And that living will can spell out in detail what you would or would not want in terms of life-sustaining treatment.
If you do not have it in writing somewhere, that my agent would not be able to make those decisions?
That would be the general rule. That is correct. Now, we do have another law in New York that deals with surrogate decision making. And what that applies to is a situation where, let's say you did not have a healthcare proxy and you didn't have a living will. So in New York, we have a Family Healthcare Decisions Act that says if you don't have those documents, then New York law allows individuals to step in and make healthcare decisions for you with certain parameters applying. All right? So we start with you should control your life.
Right.
You make all your own decisions. If you're not able to, you should have a healthcare proxy that appoints an agent to make those decisions for you, and a living will that spells out what you would or would not want regarding life-sustaining treatment.
So, sign a healthcare proxy. Definitely.
Absolutely.
And have a living will. Do both.
Correct.
At what point in our lives do we do that?
Here again, just like the durable power of attorney,
I
and
know
we
you're going
talked
to
about
surprise
this,
me on this one, right?
age 18 or older.
Age 18, right.
Yeah,
we think we have to be so much older.
Because God forbid a young person got in a car accident and they're in the hospital and decisions need to be made. That individual would want to have the maximum control over what happens. And the way to have the maximum control is to have those legal documents. So that would be the answer.
Yeah, that surprised me last week when we talked about that. In this year of COVID and so many people having obviously, horrible health problems and unexpected, this conversation is always important, but I just think it really highlights it now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we saw the tragedy, the struggles that families have had over this pandemic when who was thinking these things could happen to us, right? I mean, life was good day to day, and of course there's always emergencies and medical catastrophes, but not at the level we saw. And then the question became, who's managing the money? Who's paying the bills? How are healthcare decisions being made in the hospital?
Do I have to see a lawyer to get a healthcare proxy?
Good question. Really good question, because New York State has made this readily available to residents of New York. So there's a healthcare proxy form, and you can download it online.
Okay.
And follow the instructions. That's the key.
Well, thank you. Such important advice, always.
Oh, my pleasure.